So, for most of you, you probably won't know who this is, but for those of you that do, Marianne Williamson recently went on to the Young Turks, and she's running for president in the Democratic primary. And she goes on there and she talks about the how the primary is basically being rigged against her in favor of incumbent President Biden. And so I want to watch this video and I want to break it down and I want to show you guys exactly what is going on here. I don't know if we're going to watch the full thing. I just want to get to the point where she talks about the primary being rigged against her, and then I really want to hammer down on the fact that the DNC's own rules shows that if she hits a certain threshold, they have to let her, RFK Jr., and President Biden they have to have a debate. They have to, but they're not. So let's just break it down here.
Studio presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Marianne, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, let's get started. So you're running for president.
Yeah.
You're the most progressive of the three candidates on the Democratic side, obviously Biden, RFK Jr., and yourself. I just checked. Real Clear Politics has your average at 6% and Kennedy at 13%. And so that's just the average, but it's not the latest poll. So given that you're the most progressive, Marianne, why do you think that more voters haven't come over to your side as they did for Bernie and some others in progress in the last two races?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that in the New York Times poll yesterday on the front page, the day before, Bobby was at 13 and I was at 10. And that is definitely a gold standard poll. So that's good news. And I think
there's also something to be pointed out here too, is that Robert Kennedy Jr. is getting favorable media coverage in a lot of circles. He's getting more favorable media coverage. Now, I don't know if that's because he's a Kennedy or if they just agree with him more than they do with Marianne Williamson. But the fact of the matter is, the truth is that Marianne Williamson is facing a media blackout worse than Bernie got. And Bernie got it pretty bad. I don't know if you guys remember, but between his two runs, Bernie got 5 positive stories written on him, and 2 from the major news networks. There were literally 2 that were written by major news outlets, and it was when he got Amazon workers the $15 minimum wage, and then it was when he got Walmart workers a living wage. And so Marianne Williamson has gotten none of that. Now, I wasn't expecting it, but the least we could ask of the media is to be nuanced and to give everybody fair coverage, but they're just carrying water for President Biden, which is something that is not fair and it's not right. But that's just the way that the system is, but we got to change that. We got to make it better.
I think particularly given how invisibilized I've been, how blackballed I've been from certain mainstream media, et cetera, holding on to that 10 is a big deal. Why more people on the left have not embraced my candidacy? I spent a lot of time trying to analyze that and think about that, and it does me no good at a certain point. I don't understand it, and it's difficult even to talk about, because how can you talk about it without sounding whiny?
Can I ask you something related to that? Because the current political landscape today, I think, is very different from what it was in 2016. I'm noticing a bit of a realignment when it comes to the electorate. I don't know if you can speak to that at all, where there seems to be.
I can't speak as to why Marianne Williamson doesn't have the same punch that Bernie Sanders had, but all I can say is that a lot of leftists have kind of just they've basically given into doomerism, where they believe that nothing will change, ever, so they just have stopped voting. They've just gotten out of the political space as a whole, or there are leftists who have completely given in to the Democrats, and while a lot of them don't like Biden, they outwardly support him because they believe, and it's a factual fact, that he's the lesser of two evils. But that's not that. We have to have a Marianne Williamson. We have to have an RFK Jr. Even though I don't agree with RFK Jr., we have to have a Marianne Williamson, and we have to have we have to have an RFK Jr. in order to challenge the system, because in my personal opinion, our country will not survive another 100 years with corporatism. We just won't. It just will not happen. It just cannot happen. The country is literally falling apart at the seams, and people want to blame it on socialism. And they're right, but it's not the socialism that you think it is. The socialism that is ruining the country is socialism for the 1%. It's the fact that 50 people have more wealth than 330 million more people. That, to me, is the gap. It's the fact that 50 people, whether it be in pharma, in the fossil fuel industry, the military industrial complex, they bought and owned 90% of our politicians. So yes, it is socialism, but it's like what Martin Luther King Jr. said. It's socialism for the rich, rugged individualism for the poor. If you're not rich, the government don't want to help you. That is just the bottom line. No matter what you want to say, no matter how you want to spin it, I'm a libtard, I'm a lefty, whatever the fuck. I don't care. Listen, if you're not rich, the government does not give a shit about you. Period. Point blank, period. That is the truth.
A lot of disappointment with the Democratic Party. There has definitely been a fracturing of the left wing of the Democratic Party. The Justice Democrats, for instance, there's a big story out today about how they're really losing a lot of power and political capital. And so I'm wondering if there's just this level of disempowered left-wing voters who are kind of trying to find a home somewhere. I'm just curious what you think about when you talk to people on the campaign trail. Like, what are you noticing in terms of the rhetoric you're hearing, the conversations you're having?
What I notice is that realignment. You just said they lost power. No, they've abdicated power, and they continue to abdicate power. And they abdicate power every time they endorse Biden. So what do we? It's ridiculous.
That's a very, very good point. That's a very good point. They have the power, but they continually defend, endorse, and vote for Biden's agenda. Now, granted, the squad, at least to me, is better than 80% of Washington. Like, that's just my own point of view. I don't agree with every single vote that they have cast, and I don't think that they're right on everything, but I think that they're more right than most politicians in Washington. Like, if I had to make my pick between AOC and Kamala Harris as president, I'm picking AOC 10 times out of 10, because while I don't agree with her constantly, AOC is a genuine person. And yeah, she could be a little bitchy. I don't give a shit. And yes, she's had votes that I do not agree with. Like, even she, someone who is as staunch and anti-war as her, even she has voted for a couple of Biden's budgets. I don't think she's a fraud. I just think that she thought it was the right thing to do. I don't agree with it, and I don't like it, and I'm calling her out for it. But that's what you have to do. But for people, you guys know who I am referring to, leftists who claim to be leftists still. You guys know who I'm referring to call them frauds and sellouts. I don't think that's the case. I just think that they've made some bad votes. Even fucking Bernie Sanders has made bad votes. Bernie Sanders voted for Ben Carson to be the Secretary of Housing, okay? And you guys know that I love Bernie Sanders. but he's made bad votes, okay? So, and Bernie endorsed Biden, okay? When he should have endorsed Marianne Williamson. But it is what it is. I still love Bernie because Bernie's genuine. But the thing is, though, is that Marianne's right. They have given up a lot of their power. They don't use their leverage. The squad for a time had leverage in Washington. They don't now. They don't know. It's a shame.
Ridiculous, actually. The left needs some spine, in my opinion. So at this point, what I'm addressing is the realignment that's out there. Gen Z voters who don't really care about this conversation about 2016. They care about the fact they do not have health care. They care about the fact that they have college loans. They care about the fact that they cannot afford to pay for college. They care about the fact that they don't have paid family leave, that they don't have a guaranteed living wage. This is what I see on the street. People who are just, those conversations seem elite to them at this point. And that's what I'm speaking into. And I also feel another very significant realignment has to do with anti-corporatism itself. You know, if this was 10 years ago, I would feel like, don't you get it? Corporations are ruling the world. Don't you get it? We don't have universal health care because of insurance companies. People are rationing their insulin because of pharmaceutical companies. And we don't have green energy because of big oil. We have toxins in our food and water because of big chem, big agriculture, big food companies. We have our foreign policy is dominated by defense contractors. And 10 years ago, I might see some blank stares. Today, no. We have enough people in this country on both left and right. Remember, among Republicans.
I think she's going to say it. 70% of Americans and over 50% of Republicans are for Medicare for all. 60% of the country, including 50% of Republicans, are for free college. 70% of the country, including 50% of Republicans, are for a living wage. 70% of the country, including over 50% of Republicans, are for a universal basic income. 80% of the country, including over 70% of Republicans, are for universal child care. So these things that would literally make our lives better, the people agree on, but we have shitty politicians who will never ever pass it. That's why it never gets done, because Joe Biden doesn't have the fucking spine. He doesn't care enough to be like, I'm bucking what the Supreme Court says. I'm going FDR. I'm going to literally I'm literally going to hit them with my Kamui. I don't give a shit. I'm going to go full anime on them. I'm going to go full like Itachi, and I'm going to wipe them all out. And FDR was a fucking gangster. He did not listen to the Supreme Court. And a lot of what he did, yes, illegal, very, very much so. But FDR got results. There's a reason that he won 4 fucking times. And if he hadn't died, he would have won a 5th time, and a 6th time, and a 7th time. He would have won handedly. He had 90% progressive party or progressive Dem control of the House, Senate, governorships, state legislatures. He dominated in the 30s and 40s. He dominated. The Republicans were so shit scared that they put term limits in. Now, personally, I do agree with term limits, but in the case of FDR, I mean, if we could bring him back to life, that would be the ultimate goal. But I think a lot of reason why people tapped into politics in 2016 and 2020, and why there's this push for anti-corporate sentiment, is because of people tapped into Bernie Sanders, because they saw Hillary Clinton, the ultimate establishment. They saw Donald Trump, who was literally just pretending to be an outsider, but he was literally part of the system. He bought politicians in both parties to ensure that he could stay not politically powerful, but powerful within the system. That was him. They saw Martin O'Malley. They saw Ted Cruz. They saw Marco Rubio. They saw Chris Christie. All these people who all talked like politicians who did not give a shit. Then there was this 74-year-old hunchback Jewish man who has been in the Senate since like 1894, and they see that, and what they see is they see someone who, holy shit, he's not like your average politician. He might fight for me. It's very well possible based on his record. Bernie Sanders has the flex of being one of the only Dems to not vote for the Iraq War. He's been on the right side of history with almost every vote that he has ever had. Before it was popular, he voted in favor of gay marriage. Before it was popular, he voted in favor of unions. Before it was popular, he was marching with black people. He was marching with Martin Luther King. When Biden was trying to keep buses segregated, Bernie Sanders ensured that black people had a voice. He got arrested. There's that famous picture of him. So Marianne is really, truthfully, tapping into something here.
Republicans as well as Democrats, the majority want universal health care. Among the Republicans as well as Democrats, the majority want tuition-free college and tech school. Among Republicans and Democrats, even among gun owners, they want common sense gun safety laws. So I'm just moving forward, talking to people, and the people I talk to, whether it's Gen Z, just the people out there, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Michigan, Nevada. They're not thinking, well, what is the left going to do? That's just not where they live.
But it's interesting because the power players in the media, the power players in Washington, seem to want to really focus on what divides Americans. And I think that is a nonpartisan effort. The unwillingness to really talk about what American voters overwhelmingly agree on as opposed to what they disagree on.
Because they're creating a false dichotomy. They create look over here, because they don't want you to look up there. It's a don't look up thing. The real axis is between the powerful and the powerless. The real
We're not enemies. We're not enemies. The people are not, we're not enemies. My goal is to get healthcare for all people. We can fight about the social shit later. I don't give a shit. My goal is to get college for all. We can fight about the social shit later. My goal is to get universal basic income. We can fight over all the social shit later. You see what I'm saying? That's what she's saying. We're not enemies. I'm willing, if there are people listening or watching that are on the right wing, that are willing to work with me, I am fighting for you. We can fight about the social shit later. Most of us agree on the economic stuff. So let's work on that, get that finished. Then we can have a talk about the social shit. But let's get the economic stuff done first, because that's going to help every single person. Fighting does nothing but separates us. And that's what they want. They want us fighting. They want us fighting each other. I want us to come together and unify. Because once we unify, that's what they're scared of. They're scared of a unified coalition, which is what Bernie Sanders was building. If Bernie Sanders had gotten the nomination, Donald Trump would have gotten destroyed. Biden barely beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump would have gotten landslided badly by Bernie Sanders, because even 60% of Trump voters in 2020 said, if Bernie was the nominee, I might have to consider voting for him. 60%, which means that 40% of Trump's people in 2020 were just locked in for him no matter what happened. Fine. But there are gettable Trump voters. If you offer them a better solution, there are still gettable Trump voters. I know some of them who, when I talk to them, if I tell them about like ranked choice voting, they're for it. It's just it wouldn't work in this system, is what they said. And it's true. It would not work in this system. But they're for it. There are Trump people that are for legalizing weed. You have to win with the victories that you can get. And if you can get them to agree to your economic agenda, you can fight about the social shit later. But win with economics because it benefits all people.
Access is between those who have capital and easy access to capital versus those who are just struggling to get by. And I think enough people, at least in my experience, are open to hearing that. And of course, they don't want to look at what's real because they do more. This is legalized bribery we've got here. They do more to serve the short-term profit maximization of their donors than to serve the expressed will of their constituents, not just the safety, health, and well-being of their constituents, but even the expressed will of their constituents. That's how deep the corruption is. And my sense out in America is people are so ready to go past whether or not they see this. The real question is, okay, what are we going to do about it? And continuing to endorse Biden is not pushing Biden left.
Definitely not.
Marianne, you have a populist message that we just heard, which resonates in all quarters of politics. We've seen it now in 100 different cases. And one of the reasons, honestly, Trump rose up on the right. People always say racism, sexism, bigotry, and there's a lot of truth to that. But there's a huge amount of the electorate that didn't back Trump because of that. They backed him because of the powerful versus the powerless, as you just discussed here. And certainly progressives feel that way. You just outlined a whole bunch of policies, paid family leave, and the others that you just listed that are very progressive that we know for a fact, not just progressives, but Democratic voters overall.
And Republicans.
And by the way, Republicans, but like about 90, for example, again, take paid family leave. 94%, I believe, of Democrats are in favor of it, and 84% of the whole country, 74% of Republicans, et cetera.
I mean, I think our elected lawmakers should wait for those poll numbers to go up a little bit more before they.
Just in case.
Right, and that joke goes to the point I'm going to make. So your positions, and I think this is just a simple matter of fact. You could say, hey, I still don't agree with her positions, or I'm still not going to vote for her, but your positions are, looking at the polling numbers, the most popular, and certainly on the Democratic side, and you have your finger on the pulse on populism, et cetera, but yet the numbers are not going up. Now, I have a theory about that. It's one I shared with you before you even started your campaign, which is your number one opponent is going to be media, because they're going to do two things. One is shut you out, and the other is say that you can't win. So that's how they attack all progressives, and then they go, "Oh, I didn't attack. I'm just saying something that that we all believe." Who's we? Who's all? Like, because if you like, I can make a case that Joe Biden can't win. An incumbent that is under 50% almost never wins. He's often under 40%. So you could argue that he's the least electable, but no one in media other than me has ever made that argument.
I mean, the New York Times latest poll shows that he's in a dead heat with Donald Trump, who was just arraigned for his third indictment.
100%. But let me get to the question.
Yeah. Terrible. You're talking with who was just indicted for a guy who took so how he's done good things, but he's not flexing them. He doesn't talk about them. And the media doesn't talk about them. It's all about Trump. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Biden's done good things. Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. Biden is trying, according to him, to fight for student loan debt. Biden signed an executive order which states that in 2026, we are going to have stuff made in our country. Trump didn't sign it. Biden did sign it. Kudos to him. Biden's done good things when it comes to infrastructure. Biden's done virtually nothing when it comes to healthcare, so I'm not really happy about that. Biden raised the federal workers' minimum wage to $15. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. There are good things that Biden's done, but one, it's not good enough. Two, he's not flexing it. It's all about Trump. That's all his argument is. He's not talking about anything good that he has done, because one, him and his team probably know that it's not good enough, and two, Trump is so hated that you can just tap into that. But you're tied with him, Joe. You're tied with Donald Trump. I could run a campaign against Donald Trump and beat him easy. You could put Danny DeVito against Donald Trump, and he'd beat him easy, because Danny DeVito's a smart person. You could put any of my moderators, not that they would all, because my moderators all like him, but I'm just saying, you could put my moderators against Donald Trump. They could beat Donald Trump easy. It's easy to beat him if you know what to do. You barely beat him in 2020 with a pandemic that killed 300,000 people by the time of election day. You barely eked out a victory against a fucking game show host. You barely beat him. And now you're tied with him because your presidency, you haven't done enough to help people, and the good that you've done for people, you don't talk about it. So no wonder you're tied with him. My God.
So given all of that, but what I'm interested in is, as you're living this now for the second time, what is it that you think actually causes that mechanism? How does it get put into play? Because I don't think it's a memo. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I don't think the New York Times and the Washington Post talk and say, hey, let's make sure we keep out Marianne.
Oh, I think they do.
Okay, interesting. Go ahead.
I absolutely think they do. I can't tell you how many times we've been booked and then it's canceled.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course they do.
Yeah.
She's not, don't have her on. Absolutely, you better believe it, don't have her on. Yeah, no, that's exactly how it works. And the hit pieces and the smears and the president's press secretary coming onto the podium at the White House to mock me. Absolutely, it's intentional. And it's intentional because they know that I'm saying the things. It's not like they don't know that these are the popular positions. They do know that these are the popular positions, so they say, don't let her on to say it, because she could start a wildfire. And that's why I feel that the 10% I have, given the blackballing, given the hits, I'm thinking we're doing pretty well.
Well, I remember in 2016, Senator Sanders wasn't even really on my radar.
It's time for you to get your reading superpowered. So stop straining your eyes and start listening instead.
Skip. Okay, about the
radar. Like, he had already entered the race, but I didn't really take his candidacy seriously until the first Democratic primary debate. And given what your numbers are, given what RFK Jr.'s numbers are, it is fascinating that those percentages have not translated to a commitment by the DNC to have a debate. And I think, regardless of what you think about the candidates, primarying Biden, you should be in favor of allowing that debate to happen. The American electorate deserves to hear the ideas espoused by all these different candidates, and the inability to even have that debate, I think, is anti-democratic, which is ironic given what the Democratic Party has really hung its hat on over the last election, which is we got to save our democracy.
Yeah.
Well, what good is a democracy when you're intentionally trying to drown out candidates that want to challenge the incumbent?
And they have been saying that, and it's very undemocratic. And the American people, particularly at this time, should be listening to all of the options. They should be hearing what President Biden has planned for 4 years. What do I have planned for the next 4 years? And what does Bobby Kennedy have planned for the next 4 years? Because those are very different agendas. And it should be the American people who make the decision. It should not be like a bunch of men 100 years ago smoking cigars deciding who the candidate will be. And the traditional role of the Democratic Party is to stand to the back until the electorate has decided. But hey, it's a major multi-billion dollar corporation. That's really what we're talking about here. And there is institutional resistance to anyone but Biden because they've decided it for now. And the larger institutional resistance is the system itself. Mm-hmm. And the entire the entire matrix of corporate tyrants, whether it's insurance, pharmaceutical, big ag, big chemical, big food, gun manufacturers and chemical companies and big oil and defense contractors. And all that the political parties are doing is chopping wood and carrying water for them because those are their donors. And that's what I think Americans are understanding. It's a bigger picture. And it really is, we need a new progressive era to push back against the second golden age, just like what happened before.
So I want to dive into that institutional resistance that you mentioned there, because that's the one thing I'm most interested in. Because now, okay, latest.
I thought thought that was able to know just how for sure, but I think she also has approval numbers. Yeah, thank you for watching, and I'm gonna put the shameless plug in the end, and then that'll take you guys out. So thank you for watching. Enjoy. All right, so shameless plug time. This will also go into every single one of my StreamYard intros from now on. I want to show you guys my Patreon and my Kick. Now, the thing about my Patreon is that you guys can choose from 2 different memberships. You can either do a request, which is $3.50, or you can do Twitch, Kick, Rumble, and exclusive Patreon content. So if you want to see stuff only on Patreon that you will not see on my YouTube, Twitch, Rumble, or Kick, then go and sub. It is $10 a month, and you don't even have to pay that. If you want me to make a video on any of these platforms, then it's $3.50 for a request. Now, my Rumble. My Rumble is RG_energy. I will be doing exclusive content only on Rumble. So you can find me over on you can find me also over on Rumble, and I will put the link into the description and also put it into the community tab. And I love you guys, and enjoy the video. Peace.